we declare ourselves the finale of Small Gods Book Club. Who's not ready for it to be over? Shauna BDG just resubbed for 27 months. 27 months of amazing. I know you are, but what am I? Shauna, of course, is one of our incredible mods here and around the internet. Many of I cheered. Everyone send your healing vibes to Just here for coffee, because as of about an hour ago, he was getting settled into recovery after their liver transplant surgery that just happened today. Huge congrats and healing vibes. Oh my god, anonymous book fair to start us off. Please throw books at our new book club members. Infallible Recall, Noodle Dial, Therodon, Herf, and Crisis. Oh my gosh, it has started a hype train. Just to start us off. Hi, happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to the new members of the Enthusi Army. Therodon has just hit 2 months. Oh my gosh. Herf, welcome to the Enthusi Army. So, we just discovered the full power of hype trains on Sunday. Thank you all so much again for that during our Mass Effect stream on Sunday. Crisis, welcome to the Enthusi Army. So we are currently in a hype train, which means for the next several minutes, if you resub, sub, gift a sub, or contribute more than 100 bits, you will be in the pool of people who are going to get train emotes. Arya Flame just reset for 19 months, said, it's 6:30 a.m. and I am here for this. I don't know where you are, but wow. Great thing, LP just reset for 22 months. Thank you so much. Starpilot6 says, I've been checking my records and I believe there must be some mistake. We're completing the book in the same year we started it. Do we do that? Tatsu that's cheered. Book club hype. The turtle moves. The turtle moves indeed. Cody says, how's it going? Hope you're doing good. I am, thank you. I hope you are too. Blue Lynette just resubbed for 29 months. Been playing Stardew. Just unlocked Blue Chickens. That's a thing? Western Australia, Arya is, says Detective Zen. Oh my gosh. Amber Badger cheered. Let's do the hype train again. Yay, Pride Bits. That's wonderful. Chiramas cheered. Hype train moves. Thank you, Chiramas. Your support makes a huge difference for me. Is the reason I get to keep doing this and make time for it. I mean, look, I like to think I would pop in for some streams anyway, but it helps a lot. Mercury83 just resubbed for 22 months. Welcome back to the Enthusi Army. Okay, this book, though, says Mating of Night. Who was ready for the end? Haha, no one. Last guy cheered. The turtle moves. Oh, my gosh. Okay, it's gonna take a while to get through this. Feathers Flight just gave a gift sub to Super Only Man. Feathers Flight is throwing a book fair. Super Only Man, Sozutu71, and Lex Sonata, welcome to the Enthusi Army. Oh my gosh, I'm just going to read ahead because I think this is all going to happen out of order, and I might do some of you twice. Dark of Nate, 100 emotes, you say? Yes, I'll shamelessly jump on that train. Farley sent a bit and said, this is half my bits, but it was a beautiful pride bit, and I appreciate it. Meaning of Night was sitting in her office hours totally shook with this ending. It's a tearjerker for sure. Fluffy Butt through books, thank you. Infallible Recall is wow, very brother name, now that I say it out loud several times, is paying forward the gift sub they got from an anonymous gifter to the community and has gifted 10 subs. Welcome, Purple Tentacle, Nonsense, PW, Jedi Botanist, Grey Wolf 19, MJB 1138, nice. Lala, Sarah, Nova Prime, Geek Outs, Ghost Eye, and Galeonx? Welcome all of you back, or to the Enthusi Army. You've got wonderful emotes and sub badges made by our own Meaning of Night. We have a beautiful community-run Discord. We have the nicest people on the internet. We have a book to talk about eventually, which I'm very excited about. But I'm so glad you're all here. Thank you. And we are 31% of the way through level 3 on the hype train. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Arya Flame sent 100 bits in case sub chat thing didn't work. Olive Sharp is sending 100 bits and says, Bazone, Amy, and Army, I wish I could insta-catch up to Mass Effect, but I'll be with y'all live again one day. The books move because they are thrown. That's very in keeping with the nature of this book and the way Natural Facts and Miracles work. Grey will just be sub for 2 months. Thank you. Chandra says, I'm going to have to temporarily duck out during book chat because I want to finish on my own, but I'll be back when it's done. All right, so we're still in a no spoilers place as we get started, and then we'll warn. Oh my gosh. Blue Lynette has named one of her hens Nebula because she's a blue. That's amazing. Several wow moments to this ending, says Gamer Badger, which I feel comfortable saying out loud. An anonymous book fair, Crimson Cross, Kung Fu Fat Boy Drives, Phoenix Blue, and Jedi Smurf Trick. What wonderful names you all have. Geeky Chappy is happy but sad we've finished Small Gods. I know! The great thing about Boathouse taking 1.5 years to get through is that we got to not be done with it yet for 1.5 years. Geek Out's just been up for 8 months. Thank you so much. Oh, the Shiny Marigold. The end. There was so much. How did he put all that in so little space? Please insert Kermit hands. Cody23456, I'm sorry to hear you threw your back out. Healing vibes for you as well. Krzyzewicz says people on the Discord are awesome. Reminder to self, turn on Discord more often. Shout of 82 is just chanting book fair, which I love. Now the Arya Flame bits have come in. Tutslebus gives 100 bits and says, so who else had the lion as their favorite character? Just me? I'll be over here petting the kitty. Elfshop cheered. This is the... Soon you'll be caught up. Oh my gosh. Feathers Flight sent 500 bits and said, hype for the hype train. We have a minute left. We're on level 3, so anyone who's in the pool of people right now will get train emotes at least up to level 2, because we've unlocked that one. Oh my gosh, you all... Travis said, like P. Terry said, if you have enough book space, I don't want to talk to you. Anonymous gift sub to Kung Fu Fat Boy just came in. Oh, Moobot is yelling at people for being excited again. I'm so sorry. But Lynette says the good news is there's so much more Pratchett to read. Sequence Diphthong says the tortoise definitely moved. The tortoise definitely moved this section. Detective Zen says this hype train is crazy. How do we deal with this locomotion? Postdata is gifting 5 subs to the community. I know I'm way behind. There's 20 seconds left as of me saying this in level to see if we hit level 3 on the hype train. Thank you so much. I'm Divicious Baby. I want my D&D, Cole's Reality Kuthar, and Warhawk. Welcome all of you via post-S gift to the Enthusi Army. Oh my gosh. Meaning of Night said, read the ending being very stuffed. I know. I was like, there's 60 pages left of this book. How is this going to wrap up? And then so much happened. All right. We finished level 2 of the hype train. Thank you so much, everybody who contributed to that and threw books in chat to support. It is so much appreciated. And the train emotes are going out. Dark of Nate thinks Angus was the favorite character. Aleph Sharp says, feel free to rec books, all y'all in chat. That's our general voluntary entry fee. Is a book comic recommendation. Don't have to if you don't want to. Welcome, everyone. Bazone Book Club. Yay! Bigfoot! They're cool Sasquatchy Bigfoot train bits. That's so neat. Oh my gosh. All right. Hi, Alexander Hero. We're having a very lively beginning. We started off with a hype train because that is how excited we are for the end of Small Gods, and also because y'all are the best. So today is the final week. We're allowed to bring it up for the rest of time, obviously. But it is the final official week. Welcome, Cole's Reality. In our Small Gods book club. Our very first Discworld entry into our We Declare Ourselves a Book Club that started with Ursula Le Guin, I think 2 years ago. Zather says, Pratchett's pretty good at making things happen in short order in his works. So, from here on in, there be spoilers. We are going to discuss the entire book, Small Gods by Terry Pratchett. So this is your warning that there will be spoilers. I will check in with us in a little while, and when we get to King's Quest, we'll switch out. Bye, Chandra. Thank you. Olive Sharp cheered. This is the Book Rex one. Yay. All right. So, I'm specifically curious if this was your first read of Small Gods or your first Terry Pratchett. What do you think? Elf Sharp cheered. Almost forgot I have like 10 to 20 pages left. Back in 20 minutes or less. All right, we'll see you soon. It had been a few years since I read this. I'm happy to find that my memories of it being incredible are accurate. I really, really love... I love this book. I love what it has to say about being human. And about the things that really matter. I think probably my favorite element of it. I mean, it does so many different things. It has funny little pop culture jokes and giant statements on humanity. But the observation between, if I have to pick right now, the short exchange between Sergeant Simony and Ern, the debate over trying to help Brother when he is being tortured to death, and when Simony says, "What difference would it make?" and Ern looks at him and says, "You don't know?" Those moments, when he says to Simony, like, Vorbis, it's not his own evil that's the worst, it's what he does to you. And the way the very ending of this book plays that out, that is truly unforgettably moving. Alright. Down Under Dwarf didn't finish the book, sadly, but I'm loving it so far, I believe is what you said. Awesome so far. There we go. Farla says, this was my first and it was so good. Fluffy Butt says, it is fun. Leia Sky says, I loved it. Meaning of a Night says, this was my first Pratchett, and I was not expecting to be tossed around by my feelings through the whole end. Because so much of it is silly jokes, like, a few dirty anatomy jokes, some things about tortoises, and also the nature of humanity. Dark of Night says, I think I will read many more Pratchetts. Krojevix is still puzzled by their friend who thinks Brother has said Brutha. Meaning of Night says, I loved that the gods had to fight for their people to stop the war of people fighting for their gods. That I love. That was one of the things I was most excited to get back to. Because it's funny, like, from my first read of this book, like, one of the strongest things I took away is how much I love the little newt god. And the how many is one? Is it less than 51? And he says it's the same. Because a life is a life, and if you want thousands, you have to fight for one. And Ohm learns and changes, and it's so beautiful. Andy Ford, I really enjoyed it. It made me wonder if Pratchett, Douglas Adams, and Neil Gaiman were ever in the same room, because what a room that would be. I imagine they must have been at some point, but I don't know. Taltalda said, I had fun hearing the story again. I had a lot of different thoughts about it than I did back 10 to 15 years ago when I think I read it for the first time. Arya Flame, yeah, you mean you don't know? Shiny Marigold says, not my first Pratchett, but I enjoyed it very much. Exponentially better than the first two books in the series, and those were pretty darn good. That's what's great, is even not at the peak of his form, Pratchett is incredibly fun to read, but even when you coast along thinking you're just having a good time, then he goes, surprise! The universe exploded. And by the universe, I mean your heart. Kiki Chappie says maybe they've read the audio version, as that's how his name is pronounced on that. Brutha probably makes it feel less weird to say brother all the time. Mikey Glinsky says, I'm not sure where we're at in the conversation, but I just gotta say, the last conversation with Death was beautiful. I loved the mislead where you think that all of the leaders have died in the battle, but Death is just taking a moment to sit with them, because it both works as just a fun confounding of your expectations reading the book so far. And as a, you're like, oh, wait, that wasn't the case. And you're like, oh, I've heard a million times that death can be with you on a battlefield. It's just watching that happen, you realize all over again what that would mean for this set of fictional circumstances. Darkham Knight says, what a great payoff to have Simony lead the charge with the enemy soldiers to help the shipwreck victims. That's another of the most beautiful moments, I think, in this whole book. And also, the characters are so wonderfully flawed. Like, Ern does not make, Ern makes some decisions that he lives to regret. He's not perfectly one thing or the other from the start. But just like Simony, there's hope for basically everyone, up to and including Vorbis. Only after the fact, but, Let's start for the fourth beginning. Well. It is funny. I love noting in this book club, as we break it up into chunks, how neatly the chunks break down structurally for the book. I had never noticed that it has such distinct phases. And the ending, the point we left off last time is right before the biggest reversal, I think, of the entire book. Which would have made for a very terrible cliffhanger if we'd just gotten like 2-3 pages further, is when Vorbis, of course, knocks Brother out and leaves the desert and abandons Ohm. And you pretty much lose all hope for a little bit there. But I do love stopping at the Hermitage because it's the end of the Can They Get Through the Desert section. So he started with the new hope. He knows the way through the desert, and then everything goes promptly to heck. Rearranges itself back together in several shapes. And goes out with so many bangs. Oh, and Darkwolf makes a connection I had forgotten to make, because the reason a shepherd has 100 sheep is because he's willing to spend days getting back one. That's a very good point. I forgot they had laced that in there. Medium Knight says, oh, may not be a tortoise anymore, but he is still is a tortoise with that Thunder God's arm twisted behind his back. Patang, says everyone. It is interesting because you definitely see little sort of archetypes that are acting out what are clearly intended just to be tropes in a not negative way from Terry Pratchett's perspective, where sort of like that is an exaggerated cartoon version of a like small, relatively isolated society. The way that Lutze's manner of speaking is clearly intended to sort of draw on archetypes of Asian speech, which can kind of play as stereotypes to us. And we see later on, of course, like he has normal, fully fluent conversations. And he's also 6,000 years old, so he probably speaks lots of languages. But because this also, you can see where Terry Pratchett at least is, where his actual sympathies lie, because he also takes a vicious stab at dehumanizing enemies and using like words for them because of their funny accents. That is a behavior he's firmly against. He uses a sort of word that we would probably not use in that section to establish that, but it's very clear which side he believes he's on there. So that's an interesting, like, the use of tropes and stereotypes is complicated, but I love Patang and his people. And also Lutze and his insights, which are a key part of this. He does nudge events. I loved his intervention. They said history doesn't happen unless you make it happen. What do you guys think of the fact that the books had it going a different way and Lutze went completely rogue? Gonna go back and read through some comments. Mercury83 says, my favorite thing about this book has been knowing that while teenage me enjoyed it, current me enjoyed it for different reasons, along with realizing I hadn't understood some jokes and things. I think there were a couple that I missed my first time too. Darkham Nate, something I noticed on my second review. Ohm says a god's first believer shapes them. Ohm's first believer was the shepherd who had 100 sheep and still went looking for the lost one. Meaning of Night says, death, just straight chilling with everyone right before the potential battle, and I was like, ah! Shiny Marigold says, death is always present during a war. Fifth Daughter says, one thing I really liked is going through it with the army, you all catch things that I never noticed. That's the other reason I love doing book club. Leia Sky loves the character of death. Mercury83, remind me again, he said, how the little horse-shaped ones move. I love the classic trope of death playing chess, or playing chess with death, usually to extend your life. We think of him as being a brilliant mastermind, but it doesn't mean he knows all the rules. I did love, I'm jumping all over the place, but the line, bishops move diagonally, that's why they always turn up where the kings don't expect, was a beautiful little line. It's, of course, a reference to the rules of chess. Yeah, so Meaning of Night and Arya Flame are both talking about Ern and the realization of what his invention was going to be used for when he realizes they're using it on amphibians. Mikey Glinsky says, his handling of death was fascinating, both to compare and contrast to my other favorite portrayal, Gaiman's death from Sandman. Similar themes, very different execution. Aleph Sharp cheered! Back! Well, that was an ending. Let's see. Arya Flame, I love Lutze! Triana says, Neil Gaiman said that one reason why he wanted to write Good Omens with Terry was because he wanted to write Pratchett's death. They have two of the best deaths, I think, in the history of telling stories about death. Let's see. Kiki Chappie says, I love how the book starts with the eagle and the turtle, and that's used as the major climax of the end of Vorbis. Also how from that height, the disc does look like a globe. Honestly, they just start you with, like, a parable, a story of, consider the eagle and the tortoise, and then you don't realize that they're like, no, literally, this is going to be the plot of the book and the theme of the book, and somehow going to surprise you every time it's brought up while being completely contained in that first section. Dark Wolf says, can we play Spot the Callbacks? 2. How much earlier Ohm talks about his first prophet who predicted the temple burning, which counted even though he only predicted it 5 minutes ago while they were gathering wood. Justine Louise... thank you, Anonymous just gifted a sub. I'm going to reread your name when it comes up. Then later, Brother's first prophecy is Ohm's arrival and Vorbis' death 3 seconds before it happened. That's a really good point. Meaning of Night is, quoting from the mucked up history. Remember that whole brother dies a martyr and starts a century-long war? Yeah, well, I may have mucked it up a bit. Shiny Marigold loves when impartial observers stopping impartial and take action. Of Secrets of Thung, I loved the Islander in the war. Shiny Marigold, beautiful indeed. Brother moves diagonally and then jumps into another universe altogether. And boy, was Vorbis mad about it. Oh, that in another universe reminds me of another of my favorite lines when, Simon, he's trying to figure out what Ern is thinking about, and so he's like, well, he's looking at the turtle thing. I will also look at the turtle thing, because the line is something like he had to do the interplanetary navigation to arrive at wherever he was right now. Justine Louisine is now following. Thank you. And can't wait for Sandman TV series. I see that comment. Excellent. Dark of Nate said, I heard a speaker once who had served in the Peace Corps in the 60s and had been a conscientious objector from Vietnam. He noted that having served in the Corps, he would never have been able to call a person that commonly used slur by soldiers for a Vietnamese. That's the word that's in here, which I'm going to guess Pratchett obviously knows is not appropriate, which is why he cites it as an example, but probably doesn't know just how jarring it would sound to our ears. That might be like a Britain-America thing. Because he's right that is an example of being real dicks and making up excuses to try and distance yourself from actions. Mercury 83, we used to get much better history in the old days. It's just such a good joke. Oh, Aria Flame says there's an Elfspace site with a lot of the backgrounds and most of the jokes. Oh, that sounds wonderful. Aria Flame calls it, also says, Chekhov's tortoise, planting the tortoise and the eagle at the top. Fluffy Butt says, here's the plan. We'll attack the Temple of Om with a tortoise. Zather says, that story at the start is also very much the story of Tortoise, Brother, and Eagle Vorbis. Can we hear it again by chance? That's a good call. Now consider the tortoise and the eagle. The tortoise is a ground-living creature. It is impossible to live nearer the ground without being under it. Its horizons are a few inches away. It has about as good a turn of speed as you need to hunt down a lettuce. It has survived while the rest of evolution flowed past it by being, on the whole, no threat to anyone, and too much trouble to eat. And then there is the eagle, a creature of the air and high places, whose horizons go all the way to the edge of the world. Eyesight keen enough to spot the rustle of some small and squeaky creature half a mile away. All power, all control. Lightning death on wings. Talons and claws enough to make a meal of anything smaller than it is, and at least take a hurried snack out of anything bigger. And yet the eagle will sit for hours on the crag and survey the kingdoms of the world until it spots a distant movement, and then it will focus on the small shell wobbling among the bushes down there on the desert, and it will leap. And a minute later, the tortoise finds the world dropping away from it, and it sees the world for the first time, no longer 1 inch from the ground, but 500 feet above it, and it thinks, what a great friend I have in the eagle. And then the eagle lets go. And almost always, the tortoise plunges to its death. Everyone knows why the tortoise does this. Gravity is a habit that is hard to shake off. No one knows why the eagle does this. There's good eating on a tortoise, but considering the effort involved, there's much better eating on practically anything else. It's simply the delight of eagles to torment tortoises. But of course, what the eagle does not realize is that it is participating in a very crude form of natural selection. One day, a tortoise will learn how to fly. So, of course, that is literally the plot of the ending, as Ohm, trapped in the body of a tortoise, learns how to fly the eagle by operating him, but also because Brother, who is no threat to anyone, finds a way to outwit his situation. Let's see. Al Sharp was expecting an Aeschylus, so I was surprised when it didn't happen till the end. Aeschylus was a writer of tragedies, right? Can you remind me what we're meaning there? Huh? Shiny Marigold said, and they transformed the story of the eagle and the tortoise in the end. No tortoise had ever done that to an eagle before. Dark Wolf, I have not read that. Apparently there's a Patrick Rothfuss fanfiction where he has Discworld death and Susan Gaiman's death and Felurian in the same scene and plays with all three writing styles. Wonderful. Robert Eakes, hi! Fifth Daughter says there's a callback to Luce messing up an Omnia in a later book. T-Squared says, I loved Brother responding to Vorbis days and 30 pages later. Rest as much as you can, my son, to no, I won't. Geeky Chappy says, I also love how Vorbis' death by Tortoise echoes that of the father of Greek tragedy Aeschylus, who was said to have been killed by a tortoise which was dropped by an eagle that had mistaken his bald head for a rock. I didn't know that! That's wonderful! I mean, not for Aeschylus, but for us. Oh, wow. Okay, that was clearly intentional the whole time. That's why he's bald. That's amazing. Wow. Talk of Nate said, I had many deep emotional resonances with this book. Also, I giggled uncontrollably at its adjustable spanner. It's for twisting nuts off because I'm 5 years old. Oddly, I think my very first time reading this, I think some of those jokes went over my head. Aria Flame says, more evidence of what really infuriated Vorbis is people not doing what he expects them to do. Star Pilot 6 is calling out one of my very favorite things. Star Pilot 6 says Vorbis' first interaction with Ohm was to turn him over on his back to see how long it'd take for him to die. And I'm interjecting to say that I love the way Brother's thoughts, stuck on my back, getting warmer, are an echo of what Ohm went through as a tortoise in the beginning of the book. In fact, the comment from Star Pilot 6, his last interaction with Ohm is getting hit between the eyes while looking up to the sky, meaning he probably fell on his back. Oh, and Fluffy Bud says, I get it. Vorbis is a bald eagle. Interestingly, it says that the eagle delights in torturing tortoises, and it specifies that Vorbis doesn't really get pleasure from his. It's just who he is. But, Mercury 83, the eagle story continues, Eagles have never evolved much imagination or forethought beyond that necessary to know that a turtle smashes when you drop it on the rocks. But forming a mental picture of what happened when you let go of a heavy tortoise that was still intimately gripping an essential bit of you, its eyes watered. Arya Flame, he is a threat to Vorbis' worldview and ambitions. He sure is. The moment where he realizes Vorbis is afraid of him. Zather forgets the statistic but says there is a very real number of deaths that happen because of falling tortoises. I had no idea. Ooh, Justine Louise says never read Terry Pratchett. Been reading Sarah Douglas Wayfarer Redemption series. I haven't read those. Aleph Sharp says, I have thoughts on Vorbis, but I don't know this chat's policy on vague, content warning descriptions of historical horror. I think if we stay away from details, it would be fair to invoke some real-world parallels, because we do know that there have been a lot of real-world behaviors that have inspired stories like this, and it wouldn't be so meaningful if we didn't have real things to fight. But I'm just going to reserve the right to be like, let's back off from levels of detail there. Geeky Chappy says, yeah, I'm not sure that was a perfect translation from the Latin when Ohm persuaded the eagle to help him out. Meaning of Night says, I'm on everyone's side. Just once I'd like someone to be on mine. Poor brother. So what do we think? Brother is the prophet. I mean, we sort of knew that was coming, but what did we think of the way he arrives at that realization? And the way he conducts himself? There's an interesting moral distinction where he declines to strike Vorbis, but does not exactly say, move out of the way when the tortoise is about to smash onto his head, but it was basically going to happen. And also, Vorbis was literally in the middle of killing him at that time. Geeky Chappy says, I've read Small Gods at least twice before, but I've never got so much out of it before. You've all pointed out things I had never realized before. Minion of Night says, I like when there's all the fire and noise and Ohm above, and brother's like, cut that out and come talk to me. Tattoo Klum is now following. Thank you. Shiny Marigold says, I think he took Lutze's advice to heart, and a good thing, too. Arya Flame liked using weakness as a weapon. The moment where he realizes maybe part of the problem is that when they're discussing that the small gods at the center of the desert are weak and the ones on the outside are strong, there's one of my favorite pieces of the Captain America mythology is that part of the reason, I think the way they say it in the movie version is, someone who's been weak understands the power of strength in a way that someone who was always strong doesn't. And so the general concept that a god who has been a defenseless tortoise has more compassion and more mercy, and therefore a better ability to evaluate priorities, is one of my favorite things to happen in this book. Andy Ford said, I loved the moment when he realized that Vorbis had never heard any thoughts other than his own. Aleph Sharp says, so when I came into this book club after catching up the book, honestly, the number one thing I wasn't expecting was how surprised people were by how scary Vorbis was. I thought about it for a while and realized, it looks like this comment is going to continue, so I'm going to pick back up in the second section. Puffy Butt liked, here is a wall of religious books. Each one is the only book that you will ever need according to itself. It was very nice to know that the library does get written back down in the end. Mercury 83 says, if Vorbis moves, then Ohm likely dies, so warning Vorbis would sacrifice Ohm. Never thought of that. Rural 81 has a personal story of it. Reading this book was the moment I realized I no longer believed in the faith I was raised in. Following Brother's journey, it made sense how stories built over time. You're probably not the only person who's had that reaction. I do like the way, I think you can still read this and it doesn't have to apply to everyone's personal faith journeys, but certainly some of the questions it asks about history, I think, are very, very valuable. Tramis. ICD codes are used by doctors and insurance companies to represent diagnoses. There's ICD-10-CM code W59.22, which means struck by turtle. Really? Last guy says brother was very humble about him being prophet. Well, he spent so long unlearning what he assumed being prophet meant. That weirdly, when he says, I guess they've all had to make it up, it's felt almost like he's starting to forgive all of these people where the whole time he was just like, what do you mean you never said that to them? Meaning of Night says, I like how he made the snack seller a little prophet. Sell your turtles. You amuse me. That guy is way more likable than he should be. He also fits some sort of archetype things, but you can't help liking him. Shiny Marigold says, Brothers' thoughts on strength and weaknesses and their respective effects on gods. That's deceptively simple theology. Meaning of Night, largest non-magical library in all of Discworld. Mercury83 points out the interesting counterpoint. Another great bit following on from Death saying, there is no justice, only me. There will be justice, said Brother. If there is no justice, there is nothing. Rural says, sure, it wasn't the first time I'd read it. It hit me different before I was questioning faith. Interesting. Aria Flame says, wasn't a warning, was a prophecy about the dropping turtle. Krzyzewicz is sharing a personal observation. After years of knowing that I didn't believe the religion I was raised in, I eventually realized that I never actually did believe. I tried hard, mostly because I felt not believing would let down my parents, but it never really stuck. Zather says, that bit about Ohm appearing as a pillar of flame and what he actually said was, hey, look what I can do. Hey, gods like to kick back too. Honestly, the sort of, it sounds so strange to say it, but the righteous anger section, essentially, of Ohm going up to where all the gods are pushing around their little people on the game board, and then just starting a giant brawl over the lives of his defenders. It's funny because, like, I was raised with some Christian traditions, so there's a famous story of in the New Testament that supposedly shows Jesus going into a temple and kicking out the moneylenders. And that story is usually used as an example of sort of saying, you are missing the point and you have taken away what the purpose of this place was supposed to be. And an example of righteous anger. Now, you're going to get a million different interpretations of that story, but the vibe felt very similar to Ohm sort of being like, none of you are taking this seriously. You have forgotten, essentially, that the God-believer relationship is two-way, and you don't deserve the kind of power you have, which is what makes it sort of so fulfilling. Granted, he could be yelling this at his past self, but that the ultimate revelation is, none of this is a game. You are alive here and now. It's one of those, it sounds very sort of disappointing as grand revelations go, but it's actually so incredibly profound. Dark of Night notes the interesting thing that Brother wasn't completely against the death penalty, but wanted it done the hard way. And this is when he's cleaning out the Inquisition, only the people that really deserved it. He doesn't rule out that some of the Inquisitors... I wonder how they actually put that one into practice, figuring out who enjoyed it. He sort of said, if anyone ends up dying as a result here, it should only be those people who really were into what they were doing. But he does say just killing everyone would be the easy way, and he doesn't like that. Dark Nate says, but we also see that he doesn't hold grudges against bad people who've been punished. It's just the way he is. Meaning of Night talks about the very end, which, I mean, really the whole book comes down to this. I love the end where it's like, yeah, he's Vorbis, but I'm me. And offering his hand. Because that is the hardest thing in the world to do. Because, you know, usually if you're in real life and everyone's still alive and that reaching out of a hand involves giving that person power over you, then you really can't always live your life like that, but you can do that with your heart. Huh? Satter739 is now following. Thank you! Fluffy Butt says, we're about to kill each other. It started raining grapes. Forget this mess. Anybody want some fish? The storm that prevents the war is so incredible. Gamer Badger says, he started a fight in the war room. Yes, it's very Dr. Strangelove. TX Boot is now following. Thank you. Aleph Sharp is expanding on the thought that Aleph was surprised that everyone was surprised by how scary Vorbis was. As someone who grew up, Aleph Sharp, being taught the history of the actual Inquisitions and blood libels and pre-Holocaust hatred and horror, and I think having learned about things like people, content warning, I'm just going to read this into the text because it's history. Content warning. People taking the blood of dead kids and hiding it in the local Jews' home or synagogue and then leading mobs there to kill that family and drive the rest of them out of town. I guess that knowing how many Vorbises there are made him feel more like one of a horde of evil than I was expecting. That's, to me, what's scary about Vorbis isn't that he's a fantasy monster. It is that he represents so many people. And it's scary to look at that and know that's just, you know, part of the world out there. And it drives the power of that potential that the other worst thing they can do is make you like them. Loves the sound of says, further to death, there's no justice, there's just me. If you want to know how death really feels about justice, the book to read is Hogfather. Minium Knight says, also, Ohm talking back in the Gods fight. Ohm taking the cornucopia and dumping out the food and being like, come over here, and then bashing it with it was so funny. Triamus, thou shalt not subject your god to market forces. It's also just so funny. Zather says, I think the first time I reread Small Gods was to read all the death scenes with Brother's insight. And I love that Brother's actually a genius. You know, it takes a while for him to get the sort of seed information about the world to apply his mind to. But he's the only person in this book. And what I like about that is a genuine insight that hasn't occurred to anybody else is sort of our idea of genius and prophecy. To read out all the death scenes with Brother's insight when he asked which end had judgment. It's such a beautiful, unexpected, but very perfect, like, oh, right, you've been doing that the whole time. When realizing, oh, this is the judgment, and then wandering into the desert, the form of desert you result in, that the results from that is the consequence. Shiny Marigold says, Brother had a moment of righteous anger, I think, when he saw the army that had crept up behind him while he was trying to negotiate peace. Stupid, and we get the gods we deserve. What's funny is that, again, this book, you understand where they're coming from, too. They're trying to back him up. They are worried it's going to go wrong. They think they need to do this. Other Doc says, I remember when I first read this book, I thought Ohm was going to find new worshippers through some kind of connection to a belief in Great Atuin, but that never happened. It does lend a beautiful poetic symbolism to the whole thing, though, doesn't it? It's all about turtles. And what I like about that also is that the nature of miracles in this book is sometimes just that things happen in apparently very natural ways that then end up, you know, like the set of circumstances that leads to the doors opening for Brother. Is that the God intervening? Maybe. Maybe not. Does the God need to know he's intervening to make that happen? Does it need to be conscious to be divine intervention? Is it a sign? What is a sign? Does it need to have been planned? And I feel that part of the point of, like, he's stuck in a very ungodly shape. No one makes statues of turtles, right? And by the end of this book, there are at least 2 different statues of turtles and a guy who's going to start selling tiny statues of turtles. And there is the symbol of a turtle. I'm conflating turtle and tortoise here, but, like, the symbol of a turtle is disrupting this entire religion, and the god gets stuck in the shape of a turtle, and there are both instruments of war and torture because somehow turtles are just on the brain, and it happens by coincidence, apparently, and yet What is a miracle? What is a sign? What is a symbol? Is it this returning power of the god that's expressing itself through all these turtles everywhere? Or is it just, you know, how it goes? Gamer Badger says of Vorbis, he is too believably real. Minnie of Night says, also, I think it's a testament to Brother's character, where in the moment that he forgets a detail is when death sneaks up on him. But also that after 100 years and whatever prosperity and joy and power he has experienced, he's still offering his hand. Fifth Daughter says, Pratchett does a good job writing villains, but for me, Vorbis is the scariest. Shiny Marigold says the scary thing about Vorbis is not that he's a fantasy villain, but that he's a fantasy treatment of very real villains. Krzyzewicz says, too many people I personally know are like Vorbis, but think they're like brother. Arya Flame is quoting a wonderful part from the treaty negotiations. Excuse me, I need to pray. And he's going to have an argument with his god, which is, you know, a very literal moment. I did love the bit where he's like, the advantage of everyone thinking that he's lost his marbles is that nobody does anything because they don't want to make it worse. Darkham Nate says, democracy gives everyone someone they can mistrust, so they're all happy. Kiki Chappy, I can never get my head around how Pratchett does so many layers. They are funny, clever, and very, very deep. I don't know how he does it. And no way to pick up every little reference because there's only one P. Terry. Yeah, the sections of the book I'm so struck by. That's one of my big takeaways from this rereading, is that the Section 1, The Citadel. Section 2, Journey to Epheba, or Ephebe, with the exact center of the book being the low point where he looks down in the blackness and it's just never ending because Vorbis has made him like him. He has helped him, and it's his absolute sort of lowest point, even before betrayal and despair and all of this stuff. Right in the center. Journey backwards through and ending up in the desert is part 3, and Solution to the Desert followed by Betrayal and Return to the Citadel is part 4. And it's all sort of absurdly exact. Thunder Cabbage says, rereading this also made me a little sad that we lost Pratchett just before the new level of worldwide polarization had really taken hold, because I can just imagine what he'd have to say about it, and I really want to read that book. I think he would just be angry and sad. But he saw a lot of some of this coming. Star Pilot 6 says, I liked Ern not realizing that he was attacking amphibians, which really sort of neatly encompasses up this lesson that the things he creates one day could easily wind up being used against people he cares about the next. Obsequious Diphthong said, Vorbis had Tortoise on the brain, literally. Gamer Badger's bringing up trying to, no spoiler, but bring up some recent developments in Critical Role. I gotta catch up. Dark of Nate says, this whole story constantly reminds me of the Futurama episode where Bender becomes a god. Trying to work his way through that. Farless83 says, Kai Wynn energy. I assume about Vorbis, but absolutely. A DS9 character. Let's see. Ari Flame says, this is because he writes about the human condition, and people are always people. Star Pilot 6 says, so did we say it yet? I can't remember. If not, Terry Pratchett, why are you so good? Flashybot says, I'm glad someone else was there to witness it, or else it wouldn't be history. Ari Flame says, I found myself reassured that the small gods had someone. So is Angus a god? They're all my favorite part of this book. But another of my favorite parts of this book has to be Angus got him real good behind the ear with a rock. What do we think? Just a fun joke? Angus has physical shape, is a tiny god, is a real person no one else can see, lifted a rock with the power of miracles? Or that was just imagined by a Saint Ungulant being eaten by a lion, imagines himself being saved the way he imagines his food. Darkwolf said, I like that the conversation Brother had with the one general who was smart enough to believe Brother had good intentions when he had no reason to, but also knew why Brother's intentions failed. Leodiscadius says, late to the show, but what do you think of the statement, let's see, not based on, inspired by characters created by Sir Terry Pratchett, The Watch, which was tweeted from Terry's Twitter account about the new Guards TV show. Oh, I don't have much of an opinion about that yet. We haven't seen, the show yet. It does seem like they're making some changes, but, we're living in a really interesting age of very close and very far adaptations. And occasionally the distant ones can capture the spirit of something really well, but sometimes they're just distant. Arvandus is now following. Thank you. Shiny Marigold says, Angus for the win! Is it really madness if your delusions are real? Meaning of Night says, it was interesting to me that the whole book, Ohm makes notes to how Vorbis is so turned in on himself and how his head is like a metal chamber. And at first you just think he's very guarded. But no, Brother realizes he's just empty. Like from the beginning, he's been just empty. The fact that Vorbis can't go into the desert because he'd have to go alone, and he's finally realized just how alone he is. Zather says, to call in an earlier quote, we live and we learn, Didactylos. Some even do it the other way around. I loved that exchange so much. There's more than one way to read it, but I see it as a sassy chide about how it's important to think things through before acting. Geeky Chappy says, that Angus moment always gets me by surprise, and it's never explained. Love it. We're having a debate over loving and hating Kai Wen, or loving to hate Kai Wen, or loves the sound of says, I honestly loved Kai Wen. She was such a wonderfully broken woman and such a deeply disturbing manipulator of people. A fantastic character and so gloriously brought to life. Krzyzewicz says, we're debating pronunciation for brother. I think it's clearly supposed to remind us of the word brother, especially pronounced with a British accent. Especially in the end when Vorbis keeps saying, my brother, because it's so menacing coming from him, who's the worst. Dark of Nate likes that the Angus situation is never clarified. Mercury 83. She's a great character. The actress playing her is fantastic. Arya Flame feels bad for the lion. That lion who wanted to just go do some nice symbolic good, but might stop and eat this guy first. Nubanidus says, the ending of the book, though, where Vorbis is waiting for someone to help him across the desert. There's so many... It's funny because when Vorbis says there's the literal desert and there's the desert of the soul, he is inventing reasons to seize power and lie for his own gain. But ultimately, there is a desert of the soul, and Brother helps him across both. But anyway, Nubanus was saying the ending of the book, though, where Vorbis is waiting for someone to help him across the desert, and Brother does. It's just, I don't know. That was probably the bit that always gets me. Nemillus, yes, I know what he did. He's Vorbis. And I'm me. And what is at the end of the desert? Judgment. Which end? Shiny Marigold, we get the afterlives we deserve, kind of like we get the gods we deserve. It would explain why the seafarers just get to go off exploring forever. Meaning of Night says, what do we think about the idea that of all these versions of the desert, Brother's version of death puts him in the same place as Vorbis? It's interesting because you know, it is not clear that these deserts are exactly like, they're not exactly rewards or punishments, right? But the fact that for Brother's good works, his reward would be one final good deed that should be impossible. It should be impossible to help Vorbis. It should be impossible to reach him. 100 years of isolation, because it turns out for him, hell is not other people. Hell is his absolute aloneness. I think that's a very sweet kind of reward. if you think of it that way. Now, granted, there are no rewards. There's no judgment, only death. But there's also justice, only death. But there is judgment. Dark of Nate says, remember, the traditional belief was we walk the desert alone. And brother, true to being brother, is all, nah, we can go together. Because how it's always gone is overrated. Even in the afterlife, he can't help shaking it up. Firechild 460 is now following. Thank you. Arya Flame said, I like the language that Ohm was using when talking to the other gods, like a working class guy picking a fight at the pub. Also, it's a very funny way to reference the 20th century quantum physics debate as frequently summed up in and misunderstood in the expression God does not play dice. Which the real history of that phrase and what it means and what it says about the world is very, very complicated. But trust Terry Pratchett to take very, very complicated and make it very funny and literal. Because they sure are rolling some dice while they push their little people around. Oh, and the new god is so happy to have a stake in it. Because he doesn't realize what he's given up. But he's surrounded by people who value this. So it's perfectly natural that he would assume he should be participating, you know? Just like brother at the beginning. You don't know what you don't know. Dark of Nate points out Brother was the first person to notice Vorbis, just like he was the only person who could hear Ohm. Brother is open to things where Vorbis is closed off. New Banner says, I'm not sure if it's considered spoilers or not, but I'm pretty sure the desert and the concept of crossing it appears in later books. They aren't necessarily unique to Vorbis and Brother. What I like in this is that the first time we see it, it's neither of them. It's a random person who's not at the center of these events, but is affected by them. Not random, obviously. He's part of the plot. General Freed. It sort of shows, like, it's not that... establishes for me quite quickly that it's not just about Brother. Namilla says, yeah, they're playing Warhammer with the Fates of Men. Absolutely. They've got their minis and their dice and game counters, which felt like a very satisfying way, like, oh, the gods play D&D, but they do it with our lives, so that's way more serious. Arya Flame points out the Hell is Other People line is from a play, I think by Sartre. I haven't read the play, but the phrase is very familiar to me. Sartre's an important sort of mid-century thinker as well. Medium Knight says, it seems that Brother is also part of the truth and that he very literally doesn't really need some symbolic version of the afterlife, like how Didactylos doesn't need the symbolism of the turtle. It's just the truth whether people believe it or not. So this is where he touched a path that he could affect in Vorbis. New Humanity says, hell, the gods playing dice is like one of the fundamental concepts of the very first Discworld book. New Bandit says, yes, the minis! And Shiny Marigold loves the name of the Olympus-esque gathering of the gods, Dun Manifestin, which both sounds like a real place name and is just a hilarious, like, god vacation joint name. Chippy83 says, I'm reminded of the observation that Pratchett is actually a very angry author. I think it was Gaiman who might have first noted it. He rails for people to be better, well, people. He revolts against stodgy institutions that turn people into things and close-mindedness. It comes across strong in Small Gods, but it's noticeable across just about all of his books. That's what I love, is that, yes, it has this beautiful ending of compassion and forgiveness, but it's like, that ending has meaning because there's so much horror laced throughout. Because it is so rare and so extreme a set of circumstances, like, that it, you know, it is this almost aspirational, to me, it feels like an author saying, I would like to write a story where someone is big enough to forgive this unforgivable person because I can't let go of that anger myself. And I think I wish I could. Does that make sense? That's how I feel when I read this. Like, it gives us the gift in fiction of hoping that love could win in the end, and compassion could win in the end, and there could be justice and things could work out. But you don't need hope like that unless you have fear. Unless you're scared and you see how dark things can be, then that happy ending in death doesn't have meaning. Oh, Zathra says the Sartre play is not long. Good read. I recommend. Flame, is that true? There are places called Dunroman that people put up when they retire? Nubana says, what I love about Pratchett is that he rejects the idea that you must have a tragedy book or a comedy book. That a book that has comedy in it can't discuss extremely painful or difficult topics in a serious light, and then have comedy as a contrast, not for comedic relief, but for actual contrast to make us stop and think after laughing. Namilla says, that idea about hope and fear actually shows up in a much later Discworld book. Dark of Nate says Tolkien's whole concept for fantasy was creating a world where the good guys could win to give us the strength to get through the horrible real world. So, final thoughts on Small Gods? Favorite characters? Favorite jokes? I like that you can turn to basically any page of a Terry Pratchett book and find something that made you laugh. Kiki Chappie says, yep, good call, Flame. The God's Home is definitely a play on the Dunroman thing. That's adorable. Varla says, final thoughts. 'Twas good. Game Roger 82 says, loved it. Meaning of Night starts rooting around for more Pratchett. Varla says, but man, I've not contributed much today. That's okay, thank you for being here. Aleph Sharp says, as the book went on, I felt more related to the material experientially, weirdly. What I do like is that, yes, it's got a lot of ideas in it, but it's also a story of people that you can really follow and fall in love with as it goes. Arya Flame says the name joke, Dunroman, is taken from a lot of Scottish and places where Scots have emigrated to, where a lot of names begin with Dun, which is a word basically meaning a type of fortified place. Loves the Sound says, possibly my favorite Discworld, and I obviously haven't read it in way too long. Oh, you're talking about Going Postal, because that's the hope and fear thing. New Bennett says, final thoughts? Why the hell did it take me so long to read it? Somehow I missed it, and I've done like 4 read-throughs of the entire series recently and skipped it every time because I'd lost my copy, misplaced it. Oh, yay! Zathra says, final thoughts? Scud. Shiny Marigold says, laugh, also cry, and laugh again about any page. Arya Flame says, all of it for faves. Triana says, here's a Terry Pratchett reading guide once again for those who want to continue reading Discworld after this. There's a lot of different ways to do it. You can pick an area of Discworld to focus in on, or you can do it in publication order. It's usually not recommended to start there because his style develops over time. But if Small Gods gets you hooked. Oh no, Secret Stupid Thing, I still haven't listened to the Philosopher's Song. Kiki Chappie says, it is so perfect. I'm going to guess you mean the book. Fifth Daughter always read The God's Home as a play on words. Don't manifest here, avoiding to mortals. It could be both. Loves the Sounder says, still the Sea Queen Onion Baji comment. Still favorite. I should eat some celebratory ones. Find a place around here that has them. Fluffy Butt says, so many people tried, but in the end, no one ate the tortoise. It's good eating on one of those. As the thing repeatedly says. Aleph Sharp cheered. Can I link it in chat or live chat in the Enthusiasm Discord? Ooh, I might not be to what it is, but I'm sure you can. Gleaming Owl is now following. Thank you! Shiny Marigold says, there's so much in here. Definitely deserves several rereads. Mercury 83 says, I thought it was great. I loved Ohm because my childhood loves automatically make me feel drawn to Tortoise characters, even if they're not ninjas. Oh, the Philosopher's Song. Yes, please do link. If you don't have permissions, we'll figure out a way around. Jedi Botanist hasn't read it, but now on my short list. Oh, I hope we haven't ruined it for you. Leia Sky loved this introduction to Discworld. Now off to read Hogfather. I think you'll love it. Aleph Sharp is trying to, speaking of manifest, trying to will our next Discworld choice into existence. And yes, there will be a next. Oh, for you mean? Oh, I thought you meant for book club. So next Discworld, and yes, there will be a next, says Aleph Sharp, will be either The Light Fantastic, your library has it, or Guards. Yay! Dark of Nate, final thought. I said it last week, but shut up. Be the brother you want to see in the world. Nubanidus says, honestly, I'm torn between Thud and Snuff as my favorite Discworld book. Nubanidus, it used to be different, but I literally just start sobbing at specific parts because it just resonates with me so much. Hi, Librarian Liz. Blue Lynette says, Going Postal is your favorite. Zathar says, Thief of Time is one of your faves. Sator says, Night Guard set is my favorite mini-series. Aria Flame is recommending elfspace.org, which I believe that is what you all are saying has a recommendation or explanations for the references. Oh! I definitely have eaten pakora. I didn't realize that might be the same as onion bhaji. Numana says it might be called pakora even though they're slightly different things. Gonna catch up. Geeky Chappy says, does forbid the eating of tortoise in the end. Just one commandment. Be nice to tortoises. Nabana says, personally, my idea is to read the first 1 to 2 stories of a series and then start at the very beginning. Not because they're good, they're all good in different ways, but because the world develops slowly over time and each story is sequentially relevant to the previous one. So you miss a lot of context if you just stick to series. Chippy says, moving pictures, while not regarded as his best, is a good standalone spoof of the history of Hollywood. And if you ever had a Phantom phase, Soul Music is the one you want to read. Mgeta says, Feet of Clay and all the Tiffany books. The Witches are still my favorite, but I have ones I'm still filling in all over Discworld, so I'm excited to potentially change my mind several times. Geeky Chappy says, read Discworld in whatever order that takes your fancy. You'll end up reading them all eventually. It's not the same, says Librarian Liz, but Pakora is good. Zobblender is now following. Thank you! Nabata says onion bhaji is the same concept. Chickpea-based batter that's deep fried, but it specifically is based on strips of onion that are dipped into it. It should be light and fluffy. Pakora has a tendency to be quite dense and contain other things. Nice. Librarian Liz is translating for my southerner brain. Pakora is a hush puppy and bhaji is onion rings. Got it. Oh, am I mixing Soul Music and Carpe Joculum up? Says Mercury 3 says, Phantom is Carpe Joculum, I thought. Phantom's Masquerade! Thank you! Soul Music and Masquerade get mixed up in my head. Thank you. Yeah, Soul Music is about the Discworld Beatles, of course. I love that, like, we're talking about the nature of good and evil and institutional religion and all these different things. And it's like, but also there's one about the Discworld Beatles. Music with rocks in. That phrase introduced a younger me to the different verbal construction that where we would say something has rocks in it. All British people, I don't know, how many of y'all do this, would say blank with substance in. Because I remember staring at that, like one of the phrases and being like, is it a typo? What is this? And I think I associated it with a Terry Pratchett-ism for a while before I was like, oh, it's just a language difference. I get really interested in this stuff. All right. Many, not all. Okay. Mini of Night says, I can't wait for more book club. Very common turn of phrase. Yeah, Zather says, pull the other one. It's got bells on. Also, had to put that together eventually. Oh, Librarian Liz says it's like a specific class phrasing. That would make sense. Now that when I imagine the phrase Zather just quoted, I imagine it with an accent that makes sense. Oh, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for reading one of my all-time favorites. I've been mostly using book club as an excuse to read things I had never read before, so this was my first time being like, I hope you guys like it as much as I do. Which it turns out a real fun feeling. But before we wrap it up, first off, just a big thank you for doing this journey with me. This has been so much fun, and I get so much more out of these reading them with y'all. Obviously, for our next thing, we always need some time to get a hold of things. But I want to run this by y'all. Do you think that in about... Here's my proposal. In the next 2 weeks from today, because I'm not actually going to be... There will not be a stream next Thursday for reasons that I'm about to go into. But 2 weeks from today, let me just check my calendar and make sure I'm not lying to you all. 2 weeks today on March 5th, I want to try something a little bit different while we're picking maybe if we're our next novel or overall thing. I thought we might do a little installment. We might check out a particular one issue of a comic. So if possible, if 2 weeks is enough time, and I'm open to people's ideas if it's not, but in the next 2 weeks, it should be available digitally or possibly at a local store near you. It probably is not going to be available in libraries. I would like to read Far Sector #1. It is a DC comic by N.K. Jemisin with art by Jamal Campbell. Maggie May just resub for 12 months. Thank you. So just issue 1. The series is a few issues in. So ideally, we could periodically circle back and do another issue of this. Meaning of Night says, do check your library. Some libraries have been taking and cataloging single issues. Dark of Night says, read it, own it, love it. So Far Sector is a new character by sci-fi novelist N.K. Jemisin, written, drawn by Jamal Campbell, who's amazing. Alan Sharp cheered. I've been weekly in my local comic book store for that book. So good. We'll have to be careful about spoilers, but just issue 1 for 2 weeks from today. Far Sector will be our next book club pick. Because if we sort of put this one in between other books, we could sort of keep working our way through it and hopefully not catch up too quickly. Although if we do, we'll just all end up waiting on new issues together, right? Excellent! I'm skimming back a little to be... Olive Sharp cheered! It's in several nominations for the Wednesday's Comics Awards of 2019! I love that y'all are doing that! I'm so glad! Let's see. Everyone has thoughts on Discworld, and that's beautiful, says Namillis. Obsequious Diphthong says, final thoughts. Pratchett had thoughts about organized religion, and you sure do get a bunch of it in this book. Also, ancient Greece for the win. I mean, yeah, the fact that ultimately this would be called the Renovation, which is clearly just a funny comedy version of Reformation, which is the historical period where the Catholic Church split into more pieces. Goda02 is now following. Thank you! Although, of course, it was already not the only version of of Christianity, and that was not the only religion. So it's just but an important fracturing, especially for European history. Oh, Gamer Badger is happy about how we handled religion as a group so well. I knew y'all were the best, and I really appreciate everybody going with that. Let's see. Skimming down. Oh my god, Obsequious Tipunk says, wait, was there literally a Grecian urn in this book? Ode to a Grecian urn. Yes, there was. Alright, now I'm catching up. Bye, Jedi Botanist, who's leaving for Thursday D&D. Oh, I forgot to say, yes! The real Brainwave points out the new character. She's a Green Lantern, for those that aren't in the know. The main character in First Sector, I mean. Let's see. The Thursday Club in 2 weeks' time, Sister Amos. Geeky Chappy says, so happy to be able to join a Numbook Club finally. I probably won't be the next one, but definitely want to do it again. I'm so glad. Fuffy, but I'm not sure how to do an audio-accessible version of the comic. I'm sorry. It's a thing I've thought about as in terms of potentially picking comics. Usually I try to pick things there are audio versions of. And I'm just not sure if there is a workaround for this. Loves the sound of, would like some options for accessing and reading comics online, please. Rack Defender's now following, thank you. That's gonna be probably, purchasing it on Comixology or seeing if your library has a rental app that includes single issues. We'll discuss it on Discord. This one, unfortunately, is probably not going to be on DC Universe because I don't think it's old enough yet. But, we'll figure it out. I didn't run it by the mods first, so we'll figure it out. Feathers Flight says, I've really enjoyed listening to y'all talk about this book. All right. Medium Dice says, what service did I bookmark it on then, lol? Don't know. Alright, we are almost at the end of our regular time, but it is time to switch over to King's Quest. I will go ahead and mention right now the reason there's not going to be a stream next week is, I'm very excited to say that I'm about to see my very first C2E2. So next week I will be on my way to Chicago, a place I've only ever been once. I've never seen C2E2. I've heard wonderful things about it. I'm not going to be there for the whole time. I will post a schedule as soon as I can. But I'm real excited, and hopefully I'll get to run into some of y'all there. A con I've never seen. I'm so excited. It was not locked down sooner, or I would have, you know, I always try to let people know. Geeky Chubby, don't worry. We're definitely going to do some Geeks Quest. But, Silver Star Druid, thanks for saying hi! Yay! Is anybody going to be there? Anybody in Chicago? My Shiny Marigold reminds me to dress warm, which I definitely need to learn to do. Maggie May says, I'm going to have to finish book club later. Book was good, but I'm still working on it. Aleph, thank you for suggesting. No, I'm afraid not, but they are going to this one, aren't they? I'm going to have to wave at some people. Oh, you're going to be at PAX, Liz? Awesome. Alright, bye, Sugu Thong. Alright, short break as we switch over to King's Quest. Thank you so much for coming with me on this journey. Small Gods Discworld, our first Discworld pick. I had such a blast rediscovering it with all of you. And I'll be right back.